all not too hungover and had a great night last night. My name's Dakota. I'm hosting today's session. Some of you might know me. I am the Bearded IT Dad on YouTube. I help people with career advice and how to get started in the IT and advance their careers. So today, we're going to have a wonderful session about strategically advancing your career and starting in that career field. So let's start off with some introductions here. Jason, you want to kick us off here and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jason Gooley. I have been at Cisco for a little over 10 and a half years and then just transitioned out to working for myself as a full-time author and instructor, which is super cool. Thanks to this gentleman on the end here. I'm blessed to be part of the CCNA group and the Wolf Pack with Scott Empson back here in the crowd. Been in IT for, well, since I was 13. I won't tell you how long that is, but it's over 30 years ago. Yeah, Cisco's my life, and I absolutely love it. And I want to do everything I can to help you all get your career started and hopefully get through those certifications and make it on your own as well to be sitting up here next year.
Hi, I'm Carole Warner-Reese, and I'm not shy. Didn't wait for him to tell me to jump in. I've been in IT since after the dinosaurs, but very, very long time. And I was looking back on my career, and I think I've been in IT the whole time and started off at a refinery.
Hi, everyone. My name's Micheline Murphy. I haven't been in IT the entire time. I've been in IT now for paid for 4 years, 5 years total. Before that, I was a trial lawyer for 16 years. Before that, I was a research scientist in prostate cancer research. So I've done a few hops.
That's a great story, isn't it? Hi, I'm Wendell Odom. I've been in IT since I was a kid, so to speak, and am close to the end of that. So Jason will take over the books for me if you're familiar with my CCNA books over time. But I've been in a lot of roles: network engineer to start, network consultant, course developer. Taught a lot when the big boom happened in the 90s, and kind of settled on writing content, particularly books, to help people get their certifications. And it's been a wild ride, and it's a lot of fun.
So I think we did the math. We have over 130 years worth of experience right here in this panel. So, and I know most of that is not from me. So,
or me.
I've been in the industry for about 6 years now. But yeah, this is going to be an exciting talk. And today we aim to provide you valuable insight into the different pathways in the IT career field. We also want to share some personal stories and challenges that our panelists has faced throughout the years and provide actionable insights and strategies on how to advance your career. So we're going to dive into some essential talking, points today. We're going to talk about the different essential skills needed. We're going to cover interview tips, and we're also going to provide some insight on some of the most important things, like asking for a promotion when you know you deserve it in the career field. So without further ado, let's start kicking things off by exploring the different pathways in the IT field. Me personally, I always knew I wanted to be a network engineer or a network administrator. In high school, my high school offered the CCNA program, and that's really where I think I found my passion for networking. You could say it was love at first ICMP echo request, but I've always had a huge love for networking. But believe it or not, networking is not the only career field in the tech field. So let's kind of dive into some of the different pathways you can go in this career field, and we'll kind of go from there.
I'll start off. So, I get a lot of folks who ask me, well, how did you decide to go into IT? And I had gotten to the apex and then some of a very exciting trial career, and really kind of found myself in a stagnation point. And so I was talking to my husband one day about it, and he said, you should do what I do. I think you'd be really good at it. And I really looked at him and said, I don't know what you do. And I think, that joke doesn't sit right with anybody except the people in this whole space here, because nobody really knows what IT folks do. And it's almost a disservice to ourselves to say we're just in this all in the same industry, because there's so much to do. And in this day and age, every single company has an IT. So you could be in fashion in IT, you could be in aerospace in IT, you could be in healthcare in IT, and in manufacturing and in IT. So when I talk to folks who are early in career or they're thinking about getting into IT, the first thing I tell them is break down those things that you think about when somebody makes that joke about I got to call IT and it's the network, and the guy that's going to show up is going to be, the guy that's going to show up. Break those down right away, because there is now so much more opportunity in IT. You could be an AI scientist. You could be a data scientist. You could be an automation specialist. You could be a code developer. Just let your brain fly free for a moment and find out where that intersection is of what you like to do, and go there, because there'll be IT there.
Great response. Go ahead.
So I think I'll jump in. I like to solve technical problems. And maybe that's because I've been a mom and I like to tell people what to do. The difference with customers is I try and listen and then be a team and cooperatively solve the problems. But it's interesting in terms of, I think the most important thing is to do something you think is fun. And so are you having fun doing route switch? Are you having fun doing ACI? Are you having fun doing whatever? And make sure that you bring that enthusiasm with you into your career. So if every morning you're up and you're cheerful and you're happy because you're doing what you like to do, people will want to work with you and they'll want to learn from you, and they'll also want to share with you. So,
All right, audience participation time. Who in school growing up ever had a thought one day, I might want to be a teacher? Anybody think about that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So some of us did, some of us not, but you've met people like that. If you walk around this floor, just think about how many of the booths are about the continual learning that we just disappear from the market if we don't do, right? I know you feel the pain on that, right? So who creates that? Who delivers that training? Who delivers the content? Who makes the videos and writes the books? And I know the books are a small part of that in terms of numbers of different people, but oh my goodness. And this whole show, right? All the breakout sessions helping us build our skills. So I think that's a great career path area. In fact, inspiring story. I met somebody just 2 days ago here at the show who said, I picked my career path not because I necessarily wanted to be a teacher, but I was like, we need more of this. And then it turns up they made him do it, and he taught, and he fell in love with teaching, and he wants to be Scott Empson, who's in the audience, longtime teacher at a university of networking classes. So, you hear those kind of stories, but we need more networkers. We need more people teaching networkers too, and building the content for them to learn. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, I guess I think the other thing is for me, I started off, I had no idea that I wanted to do any of this. It was one of those things that I was literally 13 years old, and everybody makes fun of me when I say that. I was 13 years old. My best friend invited me over to his house to work on something because his mom was a computer analyst, and he would steal her books and read these things. So he was learning QBasic and Windows 3 and 3.1.1 for work groups and DOS 6.2.2 and all this stuff. And he's like, you got to come over and check this stuff out. And I really couldn't care less at the time. I was a young guy doing young things. So I'm like, what is this? I don't want to do that. So I come over, I take a look at it. And then what was so fascinating for me, he's showing me in DOS how you can navigate through folders and create directories and delete things. And that's when Deltree became my favorite command at all times, where you could just Deltree DOS and then just walk away. But I realized there that it was something in me. It was like a puzzle. It's like a live puzzle that you're trying to work on solving something or building something. And you're trying to put things together to architect some outcome for whoever. I always say customers because I've been at Cisco for so long, but somebody is always going to be your customer, and they need something that you need to try to solve for them. And I never thought that was going to be a career path for me. And then all of a sudden, I fell in love with this thing, and I started off, I had to go get my A+ certification, and I thought that was going to be the way for me, and I was just going to do computer repair. Then one day, I heard about this thing called Novell, and I got my CNA in Novell and 411B, and I fell in love with that. And then my buddy called me up and he said, you got to check out this new thing called Cisco. 1997, I heard about this thing called Cisco, and I played with it a little bit. And in 1997, I said, one day I'm going to get my CCIE. I'm going to go work at Cisco. Took me a very, very long time, till 2013, but I made it. And so I guess the reason I'm saying all this is it doesn't matter where you came from, because I came from zip. I had absolutely nothing. As long as you find something you have a passion for and that you want to dive into head first with a smile on your face, very much like what Carole said, You will find a way to make money and you will find a way to make it a career, but if you cannot find the passion, you have to come with the passion. If you don't, you're not going to make it.
So such great stories and great information already. I want to get a little personal here and dive into some of the challenges in this career field that some of you have actually faced. And, you know, for me, like I said earlier, I knew I wanted to be a networking engineer, but about 6 years ago when I first started in this field, I was actually a bulldozer operator. And I made really good money as a bulldozer operator. I was making like excess of like $70,000-$80,000 a year as a bulldozer operator, sitting in an air-conditioned cab all day, just driving forward and backwards. But I hated it. I absolutely hated the job. And it came down to I wasn't being mentally challenged enough. It was just mind-numbing work. So when I decided to make the career change to get into the tech field, I was really worried. I was a college dropout. I had no degree, I had no tech certifications, and I had no work experience. I'm like, how am I going to be able to get a successful job, you know, build a successful career in this field? But it took me just going through a few interviews, and I landed my first job as a help desk. I started at the bottom. I knew I needed to work my way up through the ranks. It actually only took me 3 years to go from help desk to director of network operations, which is the position I currently hold. I achieved my dream so quickly just by having good communication skills and good soft skills. And that's one of the things I want to start talking about is some of the important skills needed. I think soft skills are the most important skills for anyone looking to develop a successful career in this field, no matter what your career trajectory. And I know this to be true because I'm currently the hiring manager at my current job, and I know I can teach you how to do the job. I can teach you those hard skills. But what I can't teach you is how to be a good communicator, how to have those good soft skills. So I'd like to open this up to our panel here and talk about what you guys think of what are some of the other essential skills needed in this field, and or what are some of the problems you faced in your career journey?
Okay. Someone pointed to me and here we go. I think listening to others is important. I mean, often I'm called in as a consultant because I know things. But the one thing I know is the customer has looked at the problem longer and they have an idea of what they want to do. They might not say it in a way I understand, so I might have to ask them. And then one of my favorite phrases is, let me say that another way. And I repeat back to them what I've heard, but I try and parse it in terms I understand. And then they say, yeah, we get there. So I think that's a skill, is to listen to others and try and I try to look for everyone to have some expertise. Sometimes I have to look very hard, but everybody you know has expertise, maybe not in networking, maybe not in your area. And the key thing is, what is their problem? How can you solve it together? And then figure that out. And a little more on that. Sometimes what gets you in the door is a cert. And so if you have a certification and you went CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, whatever, then that'll get you in the door, maybe for an interview for a job, maybe to go see a customer. When I was between jobs once, when customer said that one employer said they wanted to talk to me because they had never met a female CCIE. And that was the only reason they had me walk in. But once I was there was an intro and I had read up on their website. I had prepared. So preparation, like Tom Brady said yesterday, very important. Wherever you go, if you have a new customer, if you have a new project, do what you can to learn about that, prepare and understand as much about that realm before you hear the specific problem.
Great advice. Who wants to go next?
So to kind of dovetail along with what Carole was saying, it's a little bit more nuanced than just listening to your audience, but also being able to parse out what they're coming back to you with and listen to understand, not just listen to respond. I know there's a great quote out there about listening to understand. As engineers, and especially in my role as a consulting engineer, where like Carole, I'm coming to customers who are dealing with problems and they may not know how to vocalize what their problem is, articulate what their problem is, but if you ask enough questions and you listen to them, you can figure it out. And that skill in and of itself, to be able to gauge and take in what your audience is telling you, is is kind of the flip side of the coin about the listen, because you can listen, but what is your intention when you're listening? And if you genuinely want to learn, you have to listen with the intent to understand and not the intent to respond. And I can say that as a lawyer, because for 16 years, what I was listening to is, what's my next cross-exam question? And that is definitely a situation where you're listening to respond. So think about that carefully the next time when you're talking to somebody. Are you listening to them with the intent to understand where they're coming from, or are we having a good old-fashioned argument?
Yeah, I think even in the same vein as all that, I think empathy, right? I mean, you have to understand, if you're talking to somebody, you want to understand what their situation is, especially if you are responsible for them as a customer, or you're the IT department lead or something like that. You know, there's always something that you can help with. And I think the more that you find yourself actively engaged, and that's the biggest thing, is the more at bats you have, the more you're going to hit the ball, right? So get out there in front of the folks and don't be shy. And I think when you're starting your career, the communication, the listening, the empathy, all of that is extremely important. But there is one skill set that I have not been brought up yet, and I don't know if it's in the cards, is it's protecting yourself, your mental health, right? Your sleep schedule, your voice, right? All of those things are incredibly important, because what does kind of happen, especially when you're starting off your IT career, and this happened to me many times over, is that you get lost in the journey. And it's fun, it's great, you're in this trajectory, you're having a great time, but sometimes you do need to take a step back, take a look at where you're at, make sure you're on track, but also make sure that you are taking care of yourself on the way. Because oftentimes when you're in the basement studying for 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, that sometimes you put yourself in an isolation bubble, and you don't want to do that. So be cognizant of that, be aware of it. It's okay to talk about mental health and stress, take naps, continue to succeed, and pass your exams.
Amen on the naps. So just a quick on the listening. Number one to me, take a great class on it. Read a book outside of work. Happy anniversary, wife. 26 years today.
Oh, happy anniversary,
Yay.
Wendell. Woo!
Listening to your wife or your spouse, number one way to convey how much you love. Sorry about that. Yes, I love my wife. I miss her on the anniversary. Anyway, but another topic for this. Thanks for the extra 30 seconds. Strengths finder. Don't focus every bit of energy on overcoming your weaknesses. Focus becoming great at what you're naturally good at, which will distinguish you in the marketplace. Strengths Finder is a book series, website, I think, that helps emphasize that. You can do personality profiles and strength profiles to figure those things out. I think that's an effective way. Maybe your thing isn't outward communication, or, as Dakota had said, hey, communication, I look for that when I'm hiring. So maybe that's not where your strength lies, but maybe it's something else. Identify it, work on that, be great at what you're going to be most impressive at if you work on it.
Such wonderful advice, as always, as I'd expect from our champions up here. So we've talked about the different career paths. We've talked about the skills. Let's talk about the one thing everyone hates when it comes to applying for a new job. Is there any guesses of what, this is the worst thing? Interview. That's it right there. And also, one thing that's worse than an interview is asking for a promotion when you know you deserve it. So let's go ahead and dive into that, and let's talk about, let's get real about this, because no one wants to go to their boss and ask for a promotion. Career advancement is super important in the career field, and it could be difficult to know when to ask for a promotion, or during your interview, we all lock up. You just saw me, lose my place here. And knowing how to recover and how to go through that process is really important. So I'd love to hear from our panelists, any tips and advice you have for those interviews and asking for a promotion.
I'm going to start off. I've had a few careers. I've had the opportunity to remake myself a few times now. When I was a lawyer, as a woman in the law, I assumed that my performance would speak for itself, that I didn't have to tout my drum because I had this body of work, and I had a tremendous body of work that I was sitting on that would be the evidence of my fitness to be promoted. And that doesn't go so well. I mean, straight up with everybody, especially if you're a woman and you're more used to being circumspect about how awesome you are. Okay, Carole, you're the exception. I'm going to follow you. Don't do that. Don't do that. No one else is going to tout your own accomplishments if you yourself aren't going to tout your own accomplishments. So when I remade myself in IT, I set about being intentional about shedding that hesitation to say how good I am. And I'm in the process right now of going for a promotion. And I sat down with my boss at the beginning of the year and I said, what's the promotion cycle? So that's question number 1. What's your timeline? Question number 2, hey boss, what criteria am I going to be judged by to get this promotion? That's question number 2. So now you have a timeline and you have a goal. Question number 3 is for your boss is, how far along am I? And what do I need to accomplish in the time I have remaining to get that promotion? So those are the 3 things that I'm doing right now. And then question number 4, sometimes the hardest, is to go and make yourself visible. So I started this conversation about saying no one's going to tout your own horn if you won't do it yourself. I literally had a one-on-one with my boss's boss, who I've talked to face twice, and said, hey, just checking in with you. I just wanted to let you know it is my intention to seek a senior position this year. I'm working with my boss on how to accomplish that. And what that does is it primes your boss's boss for your boss to go up and say, hey, I had this awesome employee on my team. They've been working really hard. They know what the game is. They know where they're going, and they need a promotion, and make it happen. That's the plan. That's my plan. I'll let you know next year what happens.
I love everything you just said, because, whatever you do, whatever goal you have to make it measurable. You have to have agreements with whoever it is you're working with to make sure that they will do indeed follow you through to that. I do want to say it is disturbing to me as a man that we allow the treatment of what happens to women in a lot of this IT career. One of the things I did at Cisco is I was on an inclusion and diversity team. I did so many things to try to make sure there should be no difference. There is no difference. This woman is way smarter than I am, been doing it way longer than I am. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Longer,
it
yes.
it doesn't matter. So I mean, this is kind of what I'm saying. IT is a job. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from. The goal is to try to make yourself a better person, a better career, and help whoever it is you're trying to help. So that is awesome, and I love it, and I hope you get that promotion. I want to hear about it. The other thing is, when you're going to talk to somebody and putting yourself out there and touting your own horn is really hard for me. It's something I'm very bad at. I am extremely humble, although I am an extrovert. I can talk to everybody. Not everybody in IT has to be an extrovert, because a lot of them are introverts and you don't want to talk, and you can have a role doing that. For me, I'm outgoing. I talk to everybody, but I always have a hard time about saying, well, but I did this, I did that. My thing was, like you said, I have this body of work. I'm just going to put my head down. I'm going to keep going. And to your point, sometimes that doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter if you've been somewhere for 10 and a half, almost 11 years, right? Anything can happen. And the whole point of that is that you make yourself comfortable with what you love to do. And then kind of everybody else, they're going to have to get comfortable with you, right?
So I'm going to talk about the interview. You're coming to talk to me or in a company and you want to come work for us. whoever the company is. Do a little homework, find out what that company does, read their website, look at them, and think about, they're doing this and this. They have a new project coming in. Maybe that's public. How would I look at that? What questions? And so instead of having, assuming that I will ask you questions, and I will, have a couple questions for me. And sort of one of my techniques is I'll put a piece of paper down, draw a sketch of whatever problem I'm working at anonymously for whatever customer and say, how would you approach that? And I like to make sure that you kind of get involved in, I'm looking for, how do you solve problems? What makes you tick? What are you excited about? And if I don't draw that out of you, when you go to see someone else and they forget to ask those questions, you could say, hey, one thing about me is I see networks in color. And so I visualize how things happen in color in the network. And my visuals are really pretty. But I take that as an advantage. And so when I say I see them in color, that means I can visualize things and explain it across the board to people. So everyone has sort of some strengths. Figure out some of yours and make sure that you bring it up and tell people that, well, if you give me a chance, enthusiastic, I'll be able to work a time. Of course, my time is, whatever time it is, but I'll be there and I'm trying every day. And, I understand that it's up, a little trip, up, a little trip, but I'll be there and I'll be applying myself every single day. And I'm committed, I'm enthusiastic. You sometimes have to temper your enthusiasm a little if you're an extrovert.
Sorry.
But you know that about yourself. And so you can just say, and I'm all in, I'm going to be helping. So, and I'm looking for a person like, everyone wants someone on their team that's fun to work with, that's trying. And like, you might, like Dakota said, I can teach you whatever if you're interested and if you want to pick it up. And so if you can show that you're enthusiastic about whatever role you're going to pick on, hey, it might be a step for me, but I'm going to be up for it. Then people will take that chance.
I loved Micheline's answer, by the way. There's nothing I can add to that bit of it. So I'll take a totally different direction. Technical interview. When I've done those, what I'm looking for is this. I want to ask you something. I want to hear you explain it clearly. Practice clarity. Practice using the right terms in the right way. But I expect to eventually get to a point where you can't answer. And that's as important. In real life, how many times have you been in front of a customer and they asked you a question and you're like, holy crap, right?
You all should be raising your hands right now.
Right. So
The rest of you are lying.
you got it.
Or really confused.
Or you are the customer, right?
But we've all been there, right? And you're going to be there again. So that's an important skill, obviously. So how do you respond to that? How do you say, I don't know that yet? And it's not so much, hey, Mr. Customer, I'll get back to you tomorrow or I'll go figure it out. But then the interviewer can talk to you and say, all right, well, tell me what you do understand. How would you go about figuring that out? Now let's go to the next adjacent technology. What do you know there? And we can get a better image of what you know coming in, knowing full well that 2 months from now, whether you work for us or not, what you know is going to be a little different, right? We're going to keep learning and keep learning. But I want to see how you react when you know it. Are you overconfident? Are you answering wrongly and fully convinced that you're right? Those kind of things. And practice those things. Get a buddy who knows a little more about a technology area to go in and draw on the board and ask you questions and try to find those edges and see how you do with those kind of responses.
So I got one more topic I want to talk to our panelists about. But before then, I would actually like to open up the session to all of you. We have over 130 years of experience up here, and I would like to see if anyone has any questions for these panelists. If you have any questions, raise your hand and I'll come out and meet you.
By the way, 60 of those years are mine.
First of all, I really love the discussion here, so it's good. Good. Why my personal problem is I like a lot. How do you depict how to focus on specific areas? Because I like to be a specialist. So if you would like to be a specialist, then you need to be really good at something. What's your idea about it on focus on specific areas?
I think for one thing, I was an SE when I started at Cisco, and I was a general. They called it a generalist, right? So that means congratulations. If it says Cisco on it, it's yours. Which kind of worked out for me because when I started my IT career and I started going through all these things, I ended up landing at a company in Chicago called Empire Carpet. And I worked there for almost 11 years, and they had everything you could imagine from a Cisco perspective, all across from SAN to whatever. And the diversity of what you get your hands on is also a very good thing to build that skill set of different types of technology and understanding how they work, how they may work together. But to your point, you do kind of need to narrow in on one thing to specialize in. And it also goes to what Wendell said, is that you have to be good at something to find your strengths so you can really differentiate yourself out in the market. I never in my life thought I was going to be the godfather of programmability. You know, all these things you hear about, I never even knew how to do programmability, you know? And I had to learn it, excuse me, to start writing this book and going down this path. And it opened doors for me I never would have thought would have ever happened in a place that I never even intended to go. So find something you love again, but you know, really you have to excel at that one thing but still be open enough to look at other things, but don't limit yourself. But at the same time, you know, don't spread out too far where you can't focus at all. That's the best thing. It's a balancing act.
I would say that we should all have, kind of to mirror what everybody's saying, we should all have a strength. I am still known in some circles as the ACI queen. I haven't implemented an ACI fabric in 2 years, but I still keep my brain in the game, and I still follow it. But in my current role, I have to know a little bit about a lot. And the thing that I can say about that kind of dichotomy is that you really need to be flexible. More than anything, any other place, I think that IT professionals need to have really agile brains. And I use that word agile specifically because everything about agility that you think about when you think about that word, it embodies what we need to do with our brains on a regular basis. I mean, every couple of years, every 6 months, every 3 months, every month, something new comes out, and your brain needs to be agile enough to take that in, understand what it is, even if it's at a high level, fit that new thing into whatever your universe happens to be, and expand your thinking about, okay, now my IT domain is a little bit bigger. Every single one of us does that on a regular basis. So in terms of, you know, am I going to be a specialist and I'm going to go deep in one thing and I know nothing else about anything else? Am I going to be a generalist? Am I going to know a little bit about everything? Yeah, figure out what makes you happy. Some people like doing one, some people like doing the other, some people like a kind of mix in the middle. The most important thing is to make sure that your brain is agile.
I also think you need to think about where you are right now. And so right now, what project you're working on, what customer you're working on, and then focus. Because there was a squirrel. No, a lot of us are like that in IT. There's so many things you can get in. And so for me this year at Cisco Live, I took all ACI sessions except for one IPv6 for fun. And so I knew, and I even took an ACI class before I came here to get my brain started to thinking about, you know, VXLANs, getting deep in there, PC tag, blah, 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 blah. Because I didn't even know it, but I had this self-conscious or subconscious idea that I wanted to redesign my ACI network, my fabric, and make it multi-pod, multi-site, blah, 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 blah. So I think you have to focus on one thing, but realize that's this 6 months, and there'll be another thing. And so if there's something else that's interesting, take some notes, jot it down, but figure out how can I advance my problem, my customer, my career right now, and do it right now, and then move on to the next thing. So I think a lot of us need to learn to focus.
We got time for a few more questions. Does anyone else have some questions for these wonderful panelists? I got a question then. Oh, you got a question? All right, let's go ahead and start with yours.
Thank you all for the great information. Can you speak something to that you all mentioned, finding your strengths, strategies on finding your strengths? That would be very helpful to all of us, I think.
Well, I may have brought that up first, so I'll go first here on an answer. So I'm pretty sure that particular program you can go through to help you find them is actually called Strengths Finder. But just from an informal perspective, um, passion. I know Jason had mentioned passion. You got to bring the passion to it. We can give you the rest, but passion's got to be there. And people will ask me sometimes, what do you do after CCNA? Since they engage with me at the CCNA stage, and say, hey, what are you interested in? I don't know yet, right? So you've got to take steps. Your steps may become ordered as you figure that out, but you might have to get a second and third and fourth step into a technology before you figure out, oh, I hate this, or I love this, or, somewhere in between kind of thing. So be okay with experimenting as far as the technological sides of things. But as far as the soft skills, where your strengths are, I think take a couple of personality tests if you have. Myers-Briggs is a famous one, but there are others that are a little bit more broad that you can do. And that's one of the things, like StrengthsFinder is basically a personality test that helps you figure out what kinds of work activities you might be best at based on your personality traits. So that's the kind of thing I was thinking of behind that earlier answer. And I'll give one of you a turn.
Maybe find a mentor. So what do you think is fun? And then if you can find a mentor and say, hey, Jason, I want to bounce a couple ideas off you. I think I'm pretty good at this and this. Do you see that about me? Where do you think maybe I could, and be honest, you can accept it, take a beer afterwards when they're mean, if they are, but reach out to others and ask them. And you start like, what is fun for you? And feel you're usually good at what's you're fun at, what you think is fun or have your passion for, because you work harder at it and you think, oh, this is not work. I'm learning something. It's a game. It motivates me. So how you find your strengths, find a person who looks for strengths and ask them too, if you can't do it internally. I mean, let's have a beer. I will tell you what I think your strengths are. I'll ask you 10 questions and come back to you. And so you need to find someone who's like willing to just tell you that and then forget you because like, hey, I lost your name. No big deal. A squirrel ran by again. But just ask people, what do they think?
I want to add to that because I think all of what we all were just talking about also drives one big important thing is that's something about what we call the community. We have a massive community in IT, especially in Cisco networking. I, for the longest time, decided I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know there was a community, so I was driving down this path alone, running alone, studying alone, in the basement alone, going through this alone, nobody to ask for help. And that was a big miss on my part, right? The community learning at Cisco, the Cisco insiders, all these folks are here for that reason. And what's awesome about it is there's so many people in the same boat, right? Who may not have that experience or may not know what exactly they want to do, but going and joining these communities and looking at these blogs and going through all this stuff, you hear other people's stories and you see what they're doing and you can see if that's something that might inspire you to go down that path and ask them, very much like what Carole said, ask them, reach out. I mean, I remember messaging Wendell and all these different folks over the years thinking they would never respond to me and just glowing, when, oh my gosh, they responded to me on LinkedIn. I can't believe it, right? But that's the whole thing. Everybody wants everybody else to succeed. No matter how many CCIEs there are out there, they're still going to need more. I mean, you're going to need more. No matter how many automation engineers, no matter what, you're never going to automate yourself out of a job, which I hear all the time. If you do, everybody in the world's going to want to hire you if you're that good to automate yourself out of a job, so you'll always have a job, right? Don't worry about it. Leverage the community, leverage the folks next to you, leverage us. We're all here. We're all social enough that we'll try to respond and help you with anything we can. And just don't feel like you're alone. And it's difficult when you're trying to find your strength, especially here this week, right? There's so much AI stuff flying by. It's a train. Every technology in this world, this IT industry is a train, and it flies by so fast. And you stand by it and you're like, man, it's too much. I don't think I can jump on. I'm so far back towards the end of the train. I don't think I can catch on. The truth of the matter is, if you don't, you'll be standing there in a year saying, man, the train's still driving by. But if you just reach out and grab it and get on that train and start, doesn't matter what it is, start, do a free DevNet lab or something, whatever it is. Now you're on the train. And there's other people standing back there saying, man, I really wish we could get on that train. Now you're in the train, you try to make your way towards that engine, get towards the front of the train because you're already on it, you're moving with it. That's the key. Jump on, start, leverage a community. We're all here for you. Hope that advice helps because it helped me when I realized that I was doing it backwards the whole time.
I'm going to kind of dovetail on that. And the thing that I personally have had to grapple with in all three of my careers, actually, is fear of failure. We all have a fear of failure. I mean, just own it. Nobody wants to fail. That feeling that you missed the mark, that you disappointed. For me, disappointing myself is the worst. So, to some extent, every single one of us has that little demon sitting on our shoulder saying, don't do it. You're going to fail. Don't do it. Don't jump for that train. You're going to fail. You got to shut that shit up.
Amen.
Like, who's happy when your maintenance goes fine and there's no problem? Everyone. And, I've been in networking forever when you schedule these maintenance windows. And at the end of them, it's like, yes.
One of the things I learned when I started getting into the community is just how frequent failure happens. I sat from my first time in an exam. I think I'm reasonably smart. I failed. I sat for it a second time. I failed again. I sat for a third time. I failed again. I sat for a fourth time. I failed again. I sat for a fifth time. I passed. But by the time I had hit the second time, I'm like, what the was I thinking about getting into this career? I am not smart enough to do this. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you I'm not the smartest person in this room. It's not me. I don't even know why I'm on this panel sometimes. But we all have our strengths, and we all can embrace success if we just never give up. My favorite quote is, persistence makes guarantees results are inevitable. Inevitable. If you never give up, you will never fail. So, one of the things that I learned is being part of this community is let's all help each other get over our own fear of failure. I tell you that I failed 4 times when I first started out, to let you all know that you're not the only one failing in silence. I've tried for the IE now 4 times. I'm still trying.
That is really great advice. And I want to follow up on imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is real in the field, and we all feel it at some point in our career. And if you say you don't, you're lying to yourself. And I actually want to ask a quick question, and maybe we might have time for one more question from the audience after this. But how have you guys dealt with imposter syndrome in your career? Because it is serious and it can lead to burnout. And I know at one point I hit it in my career so bad, I wondered if I made the right career change. I'm like, man, tech is my dream, but I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I getting these wonderful jobs? Why am I working this wonderful job? And I just kept on driving through it, and I never gave myself enough credit. But I would love to hear how guys and gals have dealt with this in your career.
All right, I'll start. I've got that all figured out.
I'd hope so by now.
It's a negative emotion. So what do you do with negative emotions? So as we mature and figure that out for any negative emotion, we've got to make a conscious thought about it and take hold of that thought and say, all right, I'm going to choose a reaction to an emotion because emotions happen. Our reaction to them are choices. And I don't want to make it too philosophical like that, but you can generalize this to other areas with emotion. I feel imposter syndrome the whole time. I mean, it comes and goes. I can't stop the emotion, but it's like, I got enough money to pay the bills this month. I'm going to get a little bit better today through my activities of the day. I'm never going to know all the breadth and all the depth that Seabreen was talking about in his question a few minutes ago. You're just not going to get there. You're always going to feel that tension of not enough depth, not enough breadth. When you feel the emotion, all right, that's the negative emotion. There's no way I'm going to know it all. I'm going to take that thought captive, and I'm going to say, I'm going to be better in the things that are in my goals and my career plan and the things I'm pursuing to make my strengths today. And still, after 43 years in networking, I feel imposter syndrome at least once a month.
So for imposter syndrome, I told my kids I was going to be on this panel, and who else was on the panel? I said, "Well, why you, Mom?" Great, thanks. And that was my younger kid. Now my older son, when he was about 9, and I was going off to take my CCIE exam for the second time, he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, are you going to pass this time?" And it was like, he's smart. He didn't understand how you could possibly take a test and not pass. And I said, "Well, there's a lot of material. I've studied a lot. Hope so. And if not, I'll do it another time." But 3 years later, when he was 13, he decided to have a LAN party. And this was a long time ago, before you were 13. Or no, after you were 13. I don't know. And one of his little friends was really into networks. And he said, "Hey, I can come over and help set up the network for you so that, all 10 of us can do this, whatever game they were playing." And he says, "Oh, it's okay. My mommy has a medal in networking." So that's one of the reasons you get certifications is, one, it tells your family and employers that, yes, you've passed a bar. And, they do notice.
Why am I on this panel again? They asked me to be on this panel, and I'm like, yes. You should never meet your heroes, right? It kind of goes back to, for me, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about touting my own horn and putting that my body of work should stand for itself kind of away. If I'm standing in front of a group, and I just had a moment, if I'm standing in front of a group and I'm speaking, it's because somebody thought I was good enough to be there. And who am I to say, well, I'm not that person you want. Stand on your own 2 feet, embrace that you are an SME in whatever area that you are in. It doesn't have to be networking. If somebody asked you to be their expert or asked you to speak on something, it's because they thought you were the person, and embrace that.
They also might think you're trainable. Because I had a customer that decided they were going to get into Azure Cloud, and they said, "Hey, Carole, I would like you to do the Azure Cloud." And I said, "Well, I haven't done it before. And, this person who I work with, Nicole, she's been working for you a little bit, and maybe she should be the lead." And he looked at me, he says, "Nah, that's okay. I figure you'll study up and you'll get it. So you be my lead." So assume that if someone asks you to do something that's outside of your current comfort level, you can do it. You just need to take that step forward and try. And maybe they'll ask you to be on a panel again. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll ask you to do Azure Cloud again. Maybe they won't. I did fine. But if you believe you can learn anything, you just kind of have to, with enough practice, with enough persistence. I'm going to go back to the Tom Brady thing. He mentioned how he practiced all the time. I heard a quote about him is that he was the most prepared quarterback, not necessarily the best, but the most prepared quarterback on most every Sunday. And so I admire that about him. I'm not a Patriots fan, but I admire that he practiced and worked at it.
This whole programmability thing for me, I kind of mentioned it earlier. That was where I first got the real imposter syndrome. Because, I didn't know it, and I was asked to write a book about it. Right. And so my approach was, they were kind enough to say that they think that I could learn it and asked me to learn it to write the book, and gave me the leeway and freedom to do that. And kind of going back to everybody's point up here, it's it was really hard for me at first because I thought, man, who am I kidding, right? And when I started learning and studying it, I started realizing, wow, I'm really kind of enjoying this. Passion started to build, right? And when I decided to start writing this stuff about it, I wrote it the exact way that I learned it. So whoever picked up the book would be able to cut through all the crap and go straight to, this is how I learned it. This is why, this is what you can do with it. And from there, you can go on for eons, right? When DevNet gave me this godfather of programmability persona, I was bright red when they told me that, right? I was so embarrassed because the Hank Prestons, the Adam Radfords, right? All these other folks who are out there who are just programmability wizards, Stuart Clarks, all these folks, they know this stuff cold, right? And I felt like, who the heck am I, Just because I was wearing a pocket square, I became the godfather. And that's basically what it was. It was this coat and the first book. And next thing you know, that book became the official guide for the, what was it called? Network Programmability Engineer Specialist exam. That's a long title that was out there. It was the first programmability exam for Cisco. And that blew up to the point where, I'm working with folks that I absolutely adore learning at Cisco or working with sales teams to actually build programs to teach programmability and interactive test drives to work with customers on how all this stuff works. And I still look back and think to myself, how did that happen to me? Like in my mind, I'm still not that person. And I think that's the other thing that we need to talk about is that I'm super humble. And for some reason, even with all the stuff with Wendell that we were talking about, we're doing this week, it's like I feel like I can't attach to it because if I do and I internalize it, somehow I have this fear that the ground's going to open up and swallow everything, right? That I'm going to lose it all. Then I'm going to go down this slide and everything that I worked so hard for is going to be gone because why me? And I think to go back to everybody's point, somebody chose you for a reason. And then this is the other biggest point, probably the last point I'll make. No matter what you do, where you are, career-wise, anything in life, you will always have to rely on someone else, no matter what. And I hate it, and we all hate it, because it's hard to rely on people because people sometimes let you down, right? But you have to put yourself out there. You have to go to those communities. You have to ask people, hey, Wendell, would you spend an hour with me one day? Or, Carole, I really would like to learn about ACI. Could you? And you'll be so surprised that almost everybody in this community will. And the folks who don't aren't the ones who are sitting up here. All right? So remember that they're here for you. We're all here for you. All right? Thanks for listening to us all.
That is such great advice. So as we wrap up the session here today, I want to talk about one last topic, and the tech field in general is evolving faster than it has ever before. With the introduction of AI, some people might be slightly concerned about the career trajectory. And I would love your guys' opinion because we all come from different backgrounds. What does the future of technology and technology career hold for us?
It's time for Wendell to go first.
Yes.
All right, this is officially the hot seat. After a long Cisco Live with countless AI sessions, you come here to this little corner of the show to find the 2-minute nugget that answers every AI question. And Jason has the answer.
The answer is AI is like a pachyderm, like an elephant. And I'm stealing this from Mr. Peter Jones over there. Yeah. Everybody, there's an old saying where there's 9 folks that are blindfolded and they're touching an elephant in different areas of the elephant to try to figure out what it is, and they can all not decide on what it is. The tail's a rope, the nose is whatever a hose or something like that. His leg is a wall. All these different things, and you're blinded by what your interpretation is. And that's the thing about AI. AI is whatever you make it. And that's what's so interesting about it, right? AI, you can be, I'm talking to Alexa, I want you to turn my lights on. That's narrow AI, right? Generative AI, I'm Chat GPT, I want you to write me a CCNA song so I can perform it at Cisco Live and lose my voice with Kenny Paula. AI is also what you dream of, right? What is driving you nuts at work? that you want to figure out how to automate. Same thing with automation. So AI, automation, all that, it's the same kind of concept, right? What you can think about individually in your environment that will help you can be another use case for AI. Same thing with automation, and everybody is different. Networks are very much like snowflakes because they're not the same. They have similar content, similar connectivity, similar devices, totally different ballgame for what your care abouts are, et cetera, et cetera. So from an AI perspective, the idea is to make things easier, simpler. For me, I absolutely love using ChatGPT to quiz and question myself, right? Just ask it questions. It's the coolest thing. Or it's like Google on steroids. You want to learn something about it real quick? Give me the top 5 blah, 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 blahs. And it dumps all this stuff out for you. I will caution you. There's a good percentage of the time that stuff is inaccurate, okay? But that gives you a good starting point to then jump off and look at things on Google, go to Microsoft's website, go to Bard and look at all these other units and figure out what it is and how it can work for you. So the nugget is, it is whatever you want to make it for you, your environment, your life, and your career. And because it's moldable, it's different for absolutely everybody. It truly is the elephant, one bite at a time.
So for me, AI is a tool, and it's you got to look at it. How can it help me solve my problems? And it's funny for me to hear that AI is new because my husband got his PhD in autonomous cars, driving autonomous cars 35 years ago. So the models have changed, the processes have changed, but AI has been around in computer science for a long time. And now they're starting to apply it to networking. And so what we're trying to do is process all this data faster. Like the McLaurin team is trying to figure out, are the tire pressure okay? They got enough gas to get around and do another lap? And so what are the problems you're trying to figure out? Is my network okay? Is there too much latency and jitter for my phone calls to make it across this country? And so it's a tool. And just assume that all the tools you use, there'll be another one. And start getting on the train. Someone's train, I forget who it was. Get on the train and start learning a little bit about it and figure out how can I start using it. And don't assume it's a panacea that'll solve all problems. It's a buzzword, but it is a technology. It's maybe like IPv6 was 10 years ago. We all thought it was going to be everything IPv6 forever. Very, very soon. It's coming. But
I'm sure Nicole does.
yeah.
I'm going to broaden our focus just a little bit because, as we were talking about tools and whatnot, you guys are all interested in, well, where do I take my own careers? And I'm going to be reflexive and turn that question back on you all. Where do you want to take your own IT career? This session is called Steering Your IT Career. And what I would say is figure out where you want to go. You're driving this bus or this train. You got on this train. Now you're driving it. Where are we going? And make a plan, make a timeline, figure it out. Talk to some folks about how to get there, and go do it. Every single one of us has gone through that technology journey. Every single one of us in this room started out where I was just a few years ago. What the hell is a switch? What do you mean multi-layer switch? I don't get that. You can learn this. Everybody has, done our fair share of ingesting things that people outside Cisco Live go, what do you do? So, put your own passions to work and trust in your own ability to learn and your own ability to guide your own train and go there.
And I think the most important takeaway is to just start. You'll never get anywhere in this career if you just tomorrow I'm going to study for the CCNA. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to read Wendell's next book. Or, but just start. Put your foot forward because, like me, I was just sitting in that bulldozer, cab, and I was thinking, man, I would like to do something different with my career. And I took that leap of faith, and now I'm up here talking to all of you. So
think you can always change your mind. Like if you like it, cool. If you don't, there's no harm, no foul. Pivot. You might like a different variation, but if you don't put that foot forward, you're not going to get there.
Absolutely.
And trains turn and switch directions. So, change. And it's making change is hard, but say, well, let's try that. I like most of it, but not all of it. What if I divert a little bit? What if I do this a little bit? What if I do that? Try it.
Well, I'd like to thank all our wonderful Cisco champions for showing up today and our wonderful panel here. We are way over time, so we will be
Sorry.
definitely around
Thank you all.
for any questions you guys have. And thank you guys for showing up.